Retro.
Hello there. This is James Arnold Taylor, the voice of Obi-Wan Kenobi, and you're listening to Dennis and Jay on Podcast Stardust. Their behavior is continuously unexpected. So uncivilized.
Welcome back to Podcast Stardust. This is the fully armed and operational podcast dedicated to Star Wars news, reviews, and discussion. I'm Dennis Keithley.
And I'm Jay Krebs.
And after taking a break so we could watch some Skeleton Crew, we are now returning to our Clone Wars series with this episode. But before we dive back into the Clone Wars, Jay, you want to remind everybody where we can be found around the internet?
All right. So we are in the same place as always, Facebook and Instagram, very conveniently at Podcast Stardust.
All right. The dish of the line, the signal's boosted to maximum output. Droll's been put to sleep. The shield is down. We're now broadcasting to the galaxy. This is our discussion of episode 18 of season 1 of the Clone Wars. Wow. We'll do this faster than I thought. Which is called Mystery of a Thousand Moons. For what it's worth, it's a full spoiler discussion. But if you haven't watched this, 15-year-old episode, or it's more than that. It's like 18, 19 years old, what it is. That's on you. Jay, you want to go ahead and read the summary for this?
Would
please?
love to. I've been looking forward to this. When a Leppy droid detonates a bomb armed with a vial of the blue shadow virus, Ahsoka, Padmé, and Jar Jar Binks must defeat battle droids attempting to escape from Dr. Vindy's vault and spread the virus to Naboo and the galaxy at large. One problem, they and their squad of clones have been exposed to the virus and are now on borrowed time. Meanwhile, Anakin Skywalker and Obi-Wan Kenobi head to the planet of Iego in the search of a route crucial to the development of an antidote to the virus. Their mission is complicated by a deadly laser system designed to destroy any ship attempting to leave the planet. In the end, Anakin and Obi-Wan successfully return to Naboo, and an antidote is administered to Ahsoka and Padmé before the virus can make its escape.
Dun, 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 dun. Yeah, there we go. So this is the second part of the two-parter that began in the last episode, which was called Blue Shadow Virus, and Dr. Vindy's insane scheme to create this virus that will spread throughout the galaxy, wiping out all life. And so they're not successful here. What did you think about this one overall?
This was a great episode. And, this is one of those that is definitely a standout in my memories as, I think about different episodes going back to this first season. And, you definitely get those ones in your mind that just automatically, like I said, just come to the forefront. And this is one. And I don't know what it was specifically about this episode that really stuck with me. I think part of it was the lore of the moons of Iego, because of course that's first thing that Anakin says to Padme, "Are you an angel? I've heard about them on the moons of Iego." So it was like, oh, that's cool. And, just Anakin having this sort of heart to heart, kind of, if you will, with this kid that was there, and they sort of shared this moment of common abilities with droids and whatnot, and then just the emotion that Anakin has as he's trying to deal with the possibility that he could lose both his Ahsoka, Padawan, and his wife Padmé. Dun,
Yeah.
dun, dun.
Right.
Lots of
So-
Easter eggs in this one. Love it.
Yeah. What became apparent to me when I was watching the featurette that they had on StarWars.com and the episode guide is this one has a lot of George Lucas's fingerprints on it. And, the biggest thing that they highlight is the development of the angels that are on Iego. And as you were just talking about, that's a reference to that line from Anakin, we met Padme. Are you an angel? I heard the pilots talk about them, like think the moons of Iego, yada yada yada. And right, and so here's that reference, and that's cool. And apparently George Lucas had a very particular vision of what those angels were going to look like, and so they went through many iterations of those before they landed on what they're going to be. Unfortunately, we never see them again on this. So
Yeah.
this is the only time we get to see the angels from the moons of Iego there. But they also incorporate concept art from the Phantom Menace. Cliffhold, the city that's on Iego, was designed by Doug Chang for there, and so that's pretty cool. And then just a kid actor like you're talking about, Jabo, being in there, kind of taking an Anakin-like role in this. This is very, very much a George Lucas story, and we're talking about this on the heels of just having completed season 1 of Skeleton Crew, where the main
Yes.
characters were all children there. And so to get a 10-year-old and in a role like this is just like, well, naturally. So, the whole idea that George Lucas targeted his Star Wars movies to like 12 years olds and children and stuff like that. Yeah, this has that same vibe, that same type of adventure story. Then on top of it, you do that things like, you and I are of a mind, because I'm repeating a lot of the same things you said, just in a different way here, that we have the hidden relationship between Anakin and Padme here. And so his frustration about that, and his Padawan's in trouble. And, we have monsters in the Xandu, and then the what's the name of the route?
Riska.
Riska, buying monsters that are there. All hallmarks of a George Lucas story wrapped up in this like tidy 22-minute episode here. So I can't say it's my favorite, but it definitely is memorable, like you said. And as soon as the episode starts and you see that little droid running around with that vial, it's like, oh yeah, this one here. And they really do cram a whole lot right into the story here. So
yeah, they really do. They really do. And I was like, oh, the bunny droid, here we go.
Yeah.
This is
I think
all
those things
gonna
are
cut through.
yeah. Those things are funny how, I can't remember what exactly was the first appearance of a Leppy droid, but we got one in the Book of Boba Fett, right? Live action here. And so, they originated, I think, in the Clone Wars. I just can't remember which episode. And they've gone on to infect Star Wars, so to speak. And, because that one had something that, was trying to raise an alarm. They wouldn't put like in a cooking pot or something in the Book of Boba Fett. I can't remember exactly. But, but those things have found their way into other areas of the saga.
Yeah, they really have. And very memorable, as you said, indeed.
So let's talk a bit more about some of the elements here. We got Dr. Vendy, who is kind of an annoying villain, but I think that's just because he's so over the top. Jedi, you misunderstand my purpose. The way he talks, it's loud and obnoxious. My job is to create a virus, not to cure one. And so when Anakin's threatening him with his lightsaber, but right there, Anakin is threatening this guy with his lightsaber. Clearly not the Jedi way. And Obi-Wan doesn't make too much of a fuss about it.
No, he really doesn't. And I think part of that though is because he's very steadily, he's almost studying Anakin in a lot of ways, and he's watching him to almost see, how far he will go. I think that Obi-Wan definitely trusted Anakin not to go to the extreme of killing Vindy, but I know he knows that he wanted to. And I mean, let's be honest, Obi-Wan knows what's going on with Anakin and Padme. I mean, it's the more I watch these back episodes, the more I realize that Obi-Wan knew it from the get-go, and I think that
You really
that
think
was
so?
part of it. Oh yeah, I really do. And the more as we get into the series, because there were different things that were said in this one, and just the look that Obi-Wan was giving to Anakin. And maybe I'm reading a little bit too much into it now, but I do feel like looking back at a lot of these episodes is like, oh yeah, either he knew or he had at least a hint of it, like a feeling of it. But at any rate, getting back to Dr. Vindy
Well,
too.
no, hold on. I want to pick up on that point.
Oh yeah, go ahead. No, you're
before you
good.
do. It's
Yeah.
just I not necessarily disputing that. It's just, for me, it is that Obi-Wan's always been aware of Anakin's infatuation with Padme, but I
Mhm.
feel like Padme has always done a pretty good job of hiding it. There's a few notable exceptions. I'm thinking like to one of the comics where one of her handmaidens catches her kissing Anakin, but she's
Mhm.
trusted to uh, be discreet about that. But at least around Obi-Wan and the other Jedi, I think Padme's been pretty discreet. So I don't know. I was always kind of thought that Obi-Wan was a little blind to the return affection of Padme, but he was keenly aware of how into Padme Anakin was.
Okay, I can see where you're definitely going with that. I mean, even going back to Attack of the Clones when they first arrive to see Padme and they're in the turbo lift and he's kind of teasing Anakin about, I haven't seen her in 10 years, master, and I thought about her every day. So I can definitely see where you're coming from there, but I guess I would have to really watch the way that Obi-Wan picks up on Padme's cues a little
Mhm.
bit more, but because I guess he wasn't there at the very, very end when Padme grabs Anakin's hand. He had
No,
already turned
no.
away by then.
Right,
But,
and
uh,
he's
but I
addressing Jar
still
Jar Binks and Rex at that
yeah.
point. So,
I am not
um,
training him. I
yeah,
love
I'm
that.
not training him. Great
He's,
line.
like, so beat up, but he's like, "So, I'm not training him."
I'm so
But,
done with the Gungan.
but I
So,
still maintain that I don't know if Obi-Wan necessarily knew, but he definitely had an inkling, I think, that there was something going on between the 2 of them, but
I
maybe
always
it's
kind of
just
wondered
me.
if he was just like, why isn't she putting an end into this, if
Mhm.
anything? Because,
That's fair.
well, I mean, in you made that reference to Attack of the Clones, and I can't believe we're going off on this Attack of the Clones tangent, but here we are. That on the way up to see her, it's he's all fidgeting and stuff like that. And he's like, relax, relax, and then afterwards, it's like, don't let your anxiety get the better of you, Anakin. She was happy to see us, but she responds like, Annie, I can't believe you're all grown up, and I have you grown, is like the line, and so have you. Like, I mean, more beautiful for a senator, or that
Yeah.
type of a thing. He stumbles over this, and the reaction then wasn't like massive flirtation back from Padme. All their flirtation is done out of prying eyes on Naboo,
Mhm.
uh, for the most part. And then even the kiss happens before they get out of the arena, onto the arena floor there. So yeah, I mean, it's no secret. I mean, Anakin has the hugest crush on Padme,
Mhm.
but I don't know. I just kind of wondered if we were there in the room, not getting the glimpses that the privileged glimpse of the audience of what those two are
Mhm.
up, if we wouldn't say, when's Anakin going to realize that she's put him in the friend zone? Uh,
No, they make very good points. Definitely.
yeah. So I don't know, but
Definitely.
okay. Well, it took up like way more time on
No,
that
you're
than I
fine.
thought, but
But I was just
uh,
gonna say about Dr. Vindy too. He's just the classic, villain. You get like Dracula and the mad scientist kind of a thing. I really liked even though it was kind of kooky and, a little cheesy, it was that well-placed Star Wars humor in a lot of ways too. It was,
oh yeah,
kind of that
yeah.
believable mad scientist kind of thing.
Well, it's also completely appropriate again for a show that is aimed at 12-year-olds
Sure. Yeah.
when it
The
comes down to it. I mean,
mwahaha. He doesn't have a mustache, but the mustache twirling villain kind of thing.
well, and if he really is supposed to be the mad scientist and someone who spent way too much time alone in a bunker with nothing but droids,
Yeah.
then that makes sense for his personality.
Mhm. Little cookie.
Yeah, very kooky. Okay, Jabo Hood, the venerable Jabo Hood, as the battle droids called him. What do you think about that character?
I thought he was super cool. And like I said, it's kind of an Anakin callback in a lot of ways because here's this kid who's obviously super smart and savvy when it comes to programming droids. And, Anakin always said, I can fix anything kind of a thing. And Anakin even says, I can't remember his exact words, but he's like, oh, you used some kind of a blanket reprogramming device on this, and the kid's like, "Huh, yeah," and Anakin's like, "Impressive," So he
Mm.
really, like I said, he had kind of a kindred spirit with this kid, but Anakin going in and just, laying waste to all those droids and and then Obi-Wan teasing him about it, and then Jabo's like, "Do you know how long it took me to reprogram those? 9 months." 9 months, man, and then you see all these droids coming around and serving him. And I loved the graffiti that he put on the droids too. He gave them smiley faces, and like you could see the little teeth on some of them that he drew, and then he dressed some of them up and then reprogrammed some of them to play music for him. And I just thought he was a really likable little character. And even though he was kind of disbelieving that they would ever get off the planet, he was savvy enough, just like Anakin would have been at that age, to be able to, kind of run interference for them and do some things for them that eventually helped them. And he
Yeah.
really did seem like somebody that everybody else looked up to, even though a lot of the other citizens seemed like they were, a lot older and whatnot. They seemed to really, look up to Jabo.
Yeah, well, he definitely had a voice. I mean, he had a presence there, and this planet's been in isolation for we're unclear exactly how long. We just know the Separatists withdrew, and then they basically blockaded the planet with this laser grid system. Which
Mhm.
again, why wasn't that used anywhere else?
I
As
know, it
a
looked like a little
technique.
focusing dish, like on the Death Star.
Yeah, yeah, coming out of that moon that the angels
Mhm.
were said to inhabit there. But again, just thinking again, it's like this. It's so fortuitous that we're discussing this right after Skeleton Crew because this planet
Right?
had a barrier that prevented everybody from leaving. It's
Yep,
just very
exactly.
similar to the barrier that was around at. So, um, I can't say that that was a influence uh, for John Watt and Christopher Ford, but why not? It's there. I
Yeah,
mean,
it does seem
it's a
very
similarity
convenient.
at the very least. No, but I thought Jabo Hood was a fun character. I mean, I generally get a little leery of interjecting a key child into, or I should say, a child into a key plot resolution point for the episode or something like that. Especially, I don't know. Is this kid special or not? Because it seems like in Star Wars we are constantly running into children that have special abilities or like way smarter than the average 10-year-old. I mean, think of Ezra Bridger,
Mhm,
when we met him, and now you got Jabo here, and even granted, Luke and Leia were force sensitive and stuff like that, but and so was Ezra at that point. But at younger ages, they were doing things that exceeded the average 10, 12-year-old's abilities and the like.
mhm.
There's just smart, super talented wonder kids all over the galaxy.
Right. I think for Jabo, a lot of it was the necessity of survival too.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because obviously he didn't seem like he had any kind of parental figures that were
Right.
guiding him, and he was just sort of doing things on his own. If he did, they're obviously not in the picture, in this
I
particular
also
episode.
wonder if the other way to look at this is that, okay, with each passing generation or every few years, kids are introduced to like more technology and more things at a younger and younger age.
Mhm.
I mean, kids can do stuff on computers now that I couldn't do until I was like 25.
True.
Uh,
Yep.
and so maybe these are just skills that are easier to acquire. And it's just like, you don't know how to do that? Like, I know Anakin was impressed the way he reprogrammed those droids, but like reassembling droids is probably isn't as big a deal for the average person as it would be for us.
Mhm.
Um, so I
No,
don't
that's a
know.
good way to
That's just
look
a
at
thought.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what did you think about the whole mystery of Droll, the ghost that prevents everybody from leaving?
Well, again, it's interesting how you pointed out the whole similarity to the barrier for Ad and they believed it to be, a certain thing that it maybe was, but not really was. And so this is kind of the same sort of a thing that, I don't know where their legend came from that this was some kind of a ghost. Somebody had to start it somewhere along the line, obviously. But the only thing that they knew was that you try to leave the planet and you don't get to leave, and that explained like the whole debris field and everything out there. But they can only see what they could see from the surface of the planet. So I think it just goes back to how any culture maintains different types of myths and legends to explain things that they don't necessarily understand. And
Right.
so, it was just one of those things that kind of started as such and then just took off and was basically considered to be common knowledge. But what do you think?
Well, I like what you said. I guess my only thought is though, the it started when the Separatists left. The Separatists haven't been around that long, a couple
Mhm,
years. And
mhm.
so, it's just and I'm only thinking of this now that we're talking about this episode. It's like, how did this guy really get the chance to become a legend? One day the Separatists were there, the next day they were not, and then nobody could leave the planet because there's a big laser shield
Mhm.
around. To me, it's like, sure, correlation does not equal causation, but that's a pretty big freaking coincidence there.
Yeah.
The um, I guess to respond. So I don't know. I don't want to make a big deal about it because it seemed like an element of the story that didn't even need to be there. It's just that the Separatists have found a way to keep us from leaving the planet. We don't know what it is. We got to do something about it. It's like every time a ship takes off, the sky lights up with lasers, and then the ship doesn't make it out of there. I
Mhm,
don't know that you need to rely on a ghost in order to make that story, especially since it, if this had been something that had been around for 20, 30, 40, 70 years, 80 years, 100 years, whatever it might have been, fine. But I mean, it literally is something that's only a few years old at this point,
mhm,
and you all know the origin. It hasn't had a chance to slip out of memory because they all know when it started.
mhm, mhm. And maybe that's just a code name for it too. When they call it a ghost, perhaps that's not, the literal sense. Maybe they're meaning what was left behind, meaning ghost. You know what I mean?
Well, I think that's a generous
I don't know.
interpretation, just
I'm just
because
blabbing.
you're trying to
The
give
ghost of
them,
Droll. And who's
yeah, you're trying to
Droll
give them some
anyway?
credit here, but that corn's banging on the table about this ghost and the
Yeah.
curse and things like that. They really believe it. So again, anyway, it's it's not like it's such a major plot point that had to be a ghost that it really matters to the outcome of the episode. Because even if they just flat out and said, "Oh yeah, that's something the Separatists often go, we can't figure out how to get past it," the solution is still the same. You go to Jabo, ask him to, get some vulture droids so that they can run interference, and then they'll take out the targeting dish, and voila, the problem will be solved. There,
Mhm.
no ghost needed for the whole
Right,
thing.
right.
And you still, and maybe that time would have been better left to highlighting the angels when it came down
Yeah,
to
we
it.
didn't get much of that. I know. I was really
Right?
kind of bummed, and like you said, we never saw them again.
Yeah.
So, we kind of really had this, talk about myth and legend, put that into our heads in The Phantom Menace, and then we finally get to see it, come to fruition, so to speak, and then boom, it's gone.
Yeah, and we never see Vendi again, despite the
Nope.
fact that we aren't aware that he ever died. And then, did he get a position in the Empire after they took over, or what happened to that guy? You would have thought that maybe on
Yeah.
Mount Tantus or something that he would have been useful, but or
Right?
maybe the
Yeah.
Empire realized how much of a crackpot he was and just got rid of him. So, um,
Yeah, could be.
all right. Well, the big portion of this episode that we really haven't given that much attention to is Ahsoka and Padme taking on the blue shadow virus down there. Um, yeah, thoughts on that?
Well, the, hazmat suits were definitely very interesting, especially for Jar Jar.
Uh huh.
And, it's one of those things that I love about Star Wars is that as futuristic as it is, there are so many things about it that are so, almost steampunk in a way. We even got to see that when they went underwater. Like they had the old kind of submarine suits that they were wearing, and this is kind of akin to that as well. But the whole idea of them trying to outrun the virus and then some of it leaking into that safe room, that there was gonna be some of the clones that were gonna end up perishing pretty
Oh
much right
yeah.
away. I mean, it's like the red shirts in Star Trek, you know? Just getting them sort of, sacrificed, so to speak. But, I mean, obviously, you had to have some sort of a cliffhanger, and what better way to do that than to have your main characters actually come down with the disease? And, as far as making it out, I think we pretty much knew that Ahsoka and Padme were gonna make it out. At the time, did I think Rex would have? I hoped so, and until the end, I didn't know if he would. because they talked about how expendable the clones were and, yada, yada, yada. And I do remember thinking to myself, oh my gosh, if Rex, like, I really believe Ahsoka and Padme are going to make it out of this, because obviously Padme does. And, because she goes on to do other things. But, we don't know at this point what the fate of Ahsoka is. We kind of figure she's going to make it. But Rex, I don't know. Would this been something to test Anakin if they would have,
Well, yeah.
knocked him out of there?
The thing is that at that time, nobody ever knew what the fate of Ahsoka and Rex were, because we never saw them during the original trilogy or at any point
Exactly.
after. We don't even see Ahsoka or Rex in Revenge of the Sith, which came out
Right.
before this.
Mhm.
So, their fate was very much up in the air. And, we kept wondering, episode to episode, season to season, whatever became of Ahsoka. Is this the one where she dies? That type
Right.
of a thing.
Yeah.
And so, that was a big mystery for a long time. It wasn't until the end of season 5 that we realized, oh, she left the Jedi Order, so she's still out there somewhere, presumably. And it wasn't
Mhm.
until Rebels that we got to see her make her return on that. But yeah, no, I mean, I wasn't particularly worried about anyone of consequence succumbing to the Blue Nile virus here, basically for the reasons you said. I mean, that a horrible death to this virus, for a main character. It's one thing when it's a side clone, right? But a
Mhm.
main character dying to this would be kind of traumatic, I think, for the tone of the show when it
Yeah.
came down to it. But I did enjoy watching them run around stopping the battle droids on this.
Yes.
They get to a ladder and there's battle droids at the top trying to saw through and escape, and then Ahsoka would pull them down with the Force and slash them in half. And the sometimes the battle droids can be a little bit grating with are we almost out yet? That type of thing, and before they
Mhm.
get slaughtered. But yeah, I thought it was appropriate level of humor for this episode.
Oh, I totally agree. Yeah, and the
Yeah,
battle droids are always good comic relief no matter what. And like you said, it is a kids show, so you're
yeah.
gonna get some of that over the topness every once in a while for sure.
Yeah. And then, you already talked a bit about Anakin and Padme's reunion at the end of this episode. Well, she's on the stretcher, and then, she says, by the way, your Padawan is brilliant. And so he walks over to her and is, talking to her. He's like, hey, good job. And she deflects. It's like, it's all due to your training. He's like, yeah, you're right. Yeah, I deserve most of the credit, but you deserve some. I thought that was a touching moment between
Oh
Master and
yeah.
Padawan,
Oh, for
because
sure.
as hot-headed as he can be and as protective as he can be of Ahsoka, that is such a cool relationship over the course of the Clone Wars.
It is. And he calls her Snips, of course,
Yeah. Yeah.
which is always a term of endearment, so that was nice.
All right. Well, we're about out of time. You got anything else you want to bring up or add to this before we wrap things up?
Well, I loved Anakin's usage of some of his Tatooine slang, things like Sleemo, and he even used poodoo at one point. And there was one point where Obi-Wan said, "These are the roots we're looking for," and it was
Yeah.
like, "These aren't the droids you're looking for." So I just thought that was pretty clever too. So just little things like that. But and then some of the stuff in the background, I brought this up before, but there were still like posters of pinup girls and stuff. Did you notice that? Like dancers or something on the
Jabo's little
wall?
hangout area. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Some of the graffiti there was like had like Jabo rules or something like that. And then Crystal Skull
okay.
was one of
Oh,
them.
okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, that's
So,
awesome. Oh my
yeah.
gosh.
Yeah, I was
That's super
stopping to
cool.
read it. I mean, some of it wasn't even graffiti. It's like they wrote on the side of buildings what things were. That there was City Hall, and some of the other buildings were mentioned in Arabesh around the town as well. So I kind of got bored stopping it all the time to read all the Arabesh. So I kind of quit after a little while.
Yeah, I'm glad you did. That's
Yeah.
really cool. But
All
other
right.
than that, yeah, I think that's about it for me.
Okay. Well, cool. So next week we'll be getting back into a little bit more Clone Wars. We'll be starting the Ryloth trilogy with Storm over Ryloth. That's episode 19 of season 1. That's going to be fun. There's
Oh
just 3
yeah.
good episodes right there.
Love that
Uh,
arc.
some very foundational things happening for our Jedi friends there.
Indeed.
Especially that one ends with a cool Mace Windu episode.
Yeah.
So make sure you all join us for that. But thank you for joining for this episode of Podcast Stardust and our ongoing series covering the Clone Wars. We hope you enjoyed it. And if you haven't done so already, go ahead and subscribe to the podcast. That'd be a huge favor to us. And then make sure you don't miss any shows. If you want to catch our entire back catalog, the best place to do that right now is to head over to retrozapp.com, where you can find all previous 830 episodes of the show, plus all the other shows that are on the RetroZap Podcast Network, covering all the other great geek topics. Jay, you want to remind everybody where we can be found on social media again and elsewhere on the internet?
Absolutely. So you can very conveniently find us on Facebook and Instagram at Podcast Stardust. And we also maintain our Pinterest boards, which has tons of different ideas for all things Star Wars. And we do have 2 YouTube outlets as well. So you can hit us up for all of our episodes, the whole back catalog. And we have our regular YouTube or traditional YouTube, as well as YouTube Music, which also supports ratings, reviews, subscriptions. We still want that plaque, just saying. So, you can definitely, definitely get that out to your friends as well. And if you want to talk to us in real time, we do have a Discord room on the RetroZap Discord server, and we are just one of many different rooms over there. So all the RetroZap shows have their own rooms. And the link to that is in our show notes if you would like to join us. And you definitely don't have to worry about going through any kind of weird magnetic field to get to that. And we also have our TeePublic store. So if you are in need of a closet refresh or just some new swag, tote bags, t-shirts, sweatshirts, coffee mugs, and the like, you can hit up the link in our show notes as well. And we do have 7 different show logo designs available. So chances are you'll find something fun. So please do, because that does help out the show.
All right. Jay, before we get out of here, why don't you remind everybody what you got going on in cosplay?
Absolutely. So always having fun over on my Instagram, which is at j.snipscosplay. I can officially let everybody know my announcement, which is that I am being featured in Creative Cosplays magazine, mid-season issue number 20, which is called Team Ups. And I'm being featured with a fellow cosplayer, Commander Oppo. So it's Commander without the E dot APPO on Instagram. And we were actually photographed by Nick Porterfield at Docker Cap Photography back at Cleveland Gaming Classic. And we were chosen to be featured in that issue. So if you want to check out my Instagram to see if you are interested in picking up an issue, either digitally or hard copy, the link to that will be in my bio. And I'm also just, of course, having all kinds of fun with tons of other things I've got going on with Ahsoka, Hera, the fourth sister, as well as my original concept Mandalorian, and much, much more coming up in 2025.
Well, upcoming on the show on Monday, we have a fresh episode of news for Star Wars. And then on Wednesday, we are doing a look back at season 1 of Skeleton Crew. Now, we've had a little time to sit with the season finale and just kind of give some of our final thoughts to wrap up our coverage of Skeleton Crew for the year. So with that, just want to say thanks for listening to episode 839 of Podcast Stardust, everyone. Have a great weekend. And until next time, may the Force be